The jagged horizon of Xelran's desolate landscape greeted Kael Renar with the same cold indifference as every other planet he'd conquered. His boots thudded against the cracked, barren soil as he strode confidently toward his ship, the Raven's Edge, parked some distance away. The familiar hum of the engines was a reminder of the hunts he'd survived and the ones he had yet to claim. His reputation had preceded him, Kael Renar, the hunter who had faced the deadliest creatures the galaxy had to offer and always emerged victorious. He smirked to himself, fingers lightly brushing the sleek barrel of his rifle, worn and scarred from years of use. There wasn't a creature on Xelran that he couldn't kill, and he was here to prove it once again. The air was thin and dry, the sky a dull, oppressive gray. Xelran was no paradise, its moon's surface was littered with ancient craters and jagged rock formations, but it was a world that bred the toughest of life forms, making it the perfect testing ground for someone like him. Bounty hunters, mercenaries, and thrill-seekers made their way to this planet to hunt the deadly Deathworlders that roamed freely, and Kael had been one of the few who had never failed. Another easy payday, he muttered under his breath as he climbed the metal steps of his ship. His smile never wavered. Inside, the ship was just as familiar as the landscape he had just left behind. The walls were cluttered with weapons and hunting trophies from various planets, claws, teeth, bones of creatures long dead. But no piece of his collection felt quite as satisfying as his latest achievement, a massive, genetically engineered Xelranian beast that had taken down 5 other hunters before him. It had been a tough fight, but Kael had emerged victorious, as always. He sat down at the control panel and activated the comms, waiting for the message he knew would come. It was only a matter of time before someone heard about his latest kill. But this time, something caught his attention, a subtle disturbance on the local network, a transmission. It wasn't from any of the usual bounty hunting crews. Kael Renar, the voice crackled over the comms. It was a woman's voice, calm but carrying a certain sharpness. "I'm Solara Devar. I'm interested in the hunt you're about to start. Meet me on the surface. I've got a question for you." Kael raised an eyebrow. Solara Devar? He'd heard of her. A survivalist, one of the few who dared to walk among the Deathworlders without the bloodlust of a hunter. He was curious, but his patience was thin. "I don't entertain amateurs," he muttered to himself, already preparing to leave. The moment Kael set foot on the surface of Xelran once again, his boots sinking into the dry dust, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. It was a thrill he could never escape, standing on the edge of life and death. He scanned the rocky terrain, his eyes flicking over the topography, analyzing every rock formation, every shadow. From the distance, he saw a lone figure, a woman, moving steadily toward him. It was Solara, unmistakable with her long, wind-swept hair and the practical gear she wore. No weapons. No sign of aggression. She moved with purpose, her posture relaxed yet alert, as if she had nothing to prove. It bothered him. "Kael Renar," she called as she approached, her tone neither welcoming nor hostile, just indifferent. "I've heard the stories." "I'm sure you have," Kael said, his voice dripping with the arrogance that had been his shield for years. "And what do you think you've heard? You came here to see the legend for yourself?" She studied him for a moment, eyes scanning his weathered appearance, his confidence apparent in every movement. Finally, she spoke again, her voice unflinching. "Did any of them walk away?" Kael's smirk faltered for the briefest of moments, but it was enough for Solara to notice. His fingers tightened around the strap of his rifle, and he took a step closer, narrowing his eyes. "You think you're better than me?" he asked, his voice thick with contempt. "You think these creatures are worth more than the satisfaction of a clean kill? They're nothing but obstacles to survival." Solara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. She was calm, composed, something that Kael hadn't expected. "No," she said simply. "I think you're just another predator who's too blind to see the bigger picture." Kael laughed, a low, mocking sound that echoed through the empty expanse. "What bigger picture? You think they deserve to live just because they're wild? Because they're just animals?" "I don't think they deserve to live," Solara said, her gaze unwavering. "I think they deserve to be understood. there's more to survival than killing. The words hung in the air, and Kael felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a slight unease. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to being questioned. "Listen," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I didn't come here to listen to some naive idealist talk about understanding. I came here to hunt." Solara met his gaze with a quiet intensity. "Then we'll see if you can hunt with more than just your weapon." For a long moment, Kael considered her words, the challenge in her tone. He wasn't used to being the one to back down. His whole life had been about proving himself superior, about ensuring that his place in the galaxy remained unchallenged. And yet, here was a woman, a stranger, questioning everything he'd believed in. But that wasn't the point. The point was that he had a hunt to finish. He had a reputation to uphold. And if Solara wanted to watch, so be it. "I'll show you what it means to be a hunter," Kael muttered, his confidence returning. Solara didn't answer. She simply watched him, as if waiting for something. As Kael made his way toward the rocky outcrop where he had tracked his prey, he felt her eyes on him. He ignored the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach, focusing instead on the hunt that lay ahead. The creature was close now, the ground trembling with each step it took, and Kael's heart began to race. But Solara's question lingered in his mind, echoing through the silence of the barren landscape. Did any of them walk away? The hunt was about to begin, but Kael Renar's world, for the first time in a long time, was about to be shaken to its very core. The hunt was supposed to be straightforward. Kael had tracked the creature for days, studying its movements with the precision of a seasoned hunter. It was a massive, quadrupedal Deathworlder, ruthless, predatory, and capable of tearing apart anything that crossed its path. For most, this would have been a death sentence. For Kael Renar, it was just another trophy waiting to be claimed. But as he stood at the edge of a jagged cliff, peering through the scope of his rifle, he felt an unfamiliar tension coil in his gut. The wind had picked up, howling through the craggy rocks of Xelran's desolate surface. Below him, the massive creature moved, its sleek form blending into the rocky landscape. But there was something different about it today. The creature wasn't moving with the same chaotic ferocity it usually displayed. It seemed more cautious, more aware. Kael frowned, his finger hovering over the trigger. This was not how it was supposed to be. He had studied this creature's every move, analyzed its patterns, and yet, here it was, throwing him off. He had no time for distractions. The hunt must continue. "Are you going to shoot, or just stand there?" came Solara's voice, cutting through the tension. Kael turned, startled. She had appeared out of nowhere, her silhouette barely visible against the dull horizon. Her calm presence in the midst of the hunt irritated him more than he cared to admit. She had insisted on joining him after their conversation, though Kael had tried to brush her off. But here she was, offering no weapon, no sign of fear, just her unwavering gaze. "Not now," Kael muttered, his eyes back on the creature. "This is my hunt, and I won't be distracted." Solara stepped forward, her movements careful, controlled. "You're already distracted," she said quietly. "You're not hunting anymore. You're fighting for your ego." Kael bristled. "My ego? I don't need lessons in hunting, Solara. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive." She was quiet for a long moment, and Kael could feel her eyes on him, assessing him, reading him like an open book. He hated it. "I don't care about your experience," she said finally. "I care about whether or not this creature deserves to die today." The words hit Kael like a slap. He didn't know what to say at first. Did it deserve to die? He had never asked himself that question. He hunted for sport, for survival, for reputation. But now, standing next to this woman who seemed to understand the creatures of Xelran in a way he couldn't, the question gnawed at him. "Of course it deserves to die," he said, trying to shake off the doubt that was creeping in. "It's a killer. It hunts to survive, and that means it's a threat to the colony." Solara shook her head. "It's a creature of Xelran. It's not evil. It's not malicious. It hunts because it has to. You're the one making it a threat." Kael opened his mouth to argue but stopped. Solara's words stuck with him, and he found himself questioning his own motivations. Was he truly hunting for survival, or was it something deeper, something darker? The hunt had always been about proving himself, about showing the galaxy that he was the best. But now, standing in the face of this creature, he felt a flicker of uncertainty. Before he could voice his thoughts, the creature moved again, its powerful limbs pushing it forward with surprising speed. Kael snapped out of his reverie, his focus returning to the task at hand. He raised the rifle, steadying his aim. The creature was closing in on the colony, its massive form growing larger with every passing second. This was it, the moment Kael had been waiting for. He adjusted his position, preparing to take the shot. "Don't," Solara said sharply, her voice urgent. "Don't kill it." Kael paused, his finger just inches from the trigger. The creature was so close now, and Solara's voice was barely a whisper against the howling wind. "What are you talking about?" Kael demanded, his frustration evident. "We have to kill it. It's coming for us." "No, it's not," Solara replied, her voice calm despite the urgency in the situation. "It's protecting something, it's young, maybe. You're about to make a decision that will change everything." "And for what? A kill for your collection?" Kael's heart pounded in his chest. He had spent years perfecting the art of the kill, but here was this woman, a stranger, telling him that the very thing he was trained to do was wrong. His grip tightened on the rifle, but his aim wavered. The doubt was there again. "Why are you even here?" Kael asked, his voice low. "You think you can stop me?" Solara met his gaze without flinching. "I think you're better than this." Kael took a deep breath, his eyes still locked on the creature below. The wind howled louder, and the creature roared in the distance, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the canyon. The moment stretched out, an eternity in which Kael was caught between two choices: take the shot and prove himself, or walk away and listen to the voice that had been nagging at him since his first encounter with Solara. For the first time, the decision didn't feel like a simple matter of survival. The weight of it pressed down on him, suffocating him. He glanced at Solara again, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to his growing turmoil. She was right in one regard: he wasn't hunting anymore. He was at war with himself. The creature, oblivious to the struggle playing out above it, continued its march, its steps steady and sure. The moment for action was slipping away, and Kael could feel his resolve begin to crumble. He lowered the rifle slowly, his fingers trembling slightly as he took a deep breath. "You're right," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "But that doesn't mean I'm done hunting." Solara said nothing, but Kael could see the faintest hint of a smile tug at the corner of her mouth. And with that, for the first time, Kael Renar began to question the true meaning of the hunt. The battle for Xelran's future had begun, but it was not the war Kael Renar had prepared for. It had nothing to do with the usual bloodlust that fueled his hunts. This was something else, something far more personal. Kael, rifle in hand, walked alongside Solara through the dusty ravines of the moon's rugged surface, both of them silent for once. The sky overhead, once a harsh gray, now seemed to reflect the unease in Kael's chest, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The colony was under siege. Reports had filtered in, Deathworlders, in unprecedented numbers, were approaching the settlement. Kael had never seen a threat like this before. These weren't just predators, these were creatures with purpose, their actions calculated and precise, as if driven by some deeper instinct or intelligence. The idea that they could pose a threat to the colony had unsettled even Kael. He wasn't sure what to make of it, and for the first time, the hunt didn't seem like the straightforward game he was used to. "How much longer?" Kael asked, his voice tense. Solara didn't reply immediately, her gaze fixed ahead. She had a map of the terrain on her datapad, tracking the movements of the creatures with a precision Kael envied. She knew these creatures better than anyone, better than him, certainly. She didn't need to say it out loud, but Kael could sense her doubts too. She was as unsure of the next move as he was, but she wasn't letting it show. "We'll be in range in a few minutes," Solara said, finally glancing at him. "But we need to understand their behavior." They're not attacking randomly. Something's driving them. Kael's brow furrowed. A threat's a threat. You don't waste time trying to understand it. You eliminate it. Her eyes flickered toward him. Not all things can be eliminated. Especially when they're protecting something. Kael looked away, unwilling to admit she had a point. But the truth was there, gnawing at him. These creatures were far more organized than he'd ever anticipated. As much as his hunter's instincts screamed to act, his mind, now clouded with uncertainty, urged caution. They reached a vantage point overlooking the colony. The settlement lay below them, a cluster of small buildings surrounded by a makeshift barricade. But it was the creatures he focused on, dozens, maybe more, moving in a single, coordinated wave. Their eyes glowed with an eerie intelligence, their movements synchronized in a way that made Kael's stomach turn. These weren't just animals, they were something more. Kael raised his rifle and adjusted his position, aiming down the scope. The first wave of creatures was nearly upon them, and Kael's finger hovered above the trigger. But something stopped him. A sense of wrongness, as if every fiber in his body was telling him this wasn't the right way to approach this. Solara, sensing his hesitation, took a step forward. Kael, wait. We can't just kill them all. We don't know why they're attacking. His jaw tightened. He lowered the rifle slightly, his frustration mounting. You've been saying that since we arrived, Solara. But they're coming for the colony. They'll destroy everything. What do you want me to do? They're not coming for no reason, she pressed, her voice calm but urgent. We need to stop the attack, not just kill them. There's a purpose behind this. Kael shook his head. You're not making any sense. You think we can just talk to them? They're not going to listen to reason. This isn't about talking, she replied, her tone sharp. This is about stopping the cycle of violence. You don't have to kill every threat to survive, Kael. Kael looked down at the rifle in his hands, its weight suddenly feeling like an anchor. He had spent his whole life believing that a hunter's job was to kill, nothing more, nothing less. But now, standing in the face of this alien intelligence, those old beliefs felt hollow. Was he really just a killer? Before he could answer, a loud roar split the air. The first wave of Deathworlders had reached the colony's outer defenses. The barricade was no match for the creature's immense strength. The walls crumpled under the force of the assault. Kael's instincts kicked in. He raised the rifle again, his fingers tightening around the trigger. Stop! Solara's voice rang out, sharp as a whip. She stepped between him and the advancing creatures, her posture firm. We can stop this without bloodshed. Kael looked at her, the rifle still aimed at the group of creatures. His heart pounded in his chest. The chaos of battle was in the air, and the hunter an image to release his frustration, to let the weapon do what it had always done. But Solara, she was different. Her resolve held him back, forcing him to think, to consider her words. What do you want me to do? Kael asked, his voice tight. They're already breaking through the barricades. We don't have time for this. Solara turned to face the creatures, her eyes focused on the leader, a massive, muscular creature at the forefront of the attack. We need to isolate it. It's the one driving them, and if we stop it, the rest will follow. Kael's brow furrowed. Isolate it. How do you? But before he could finish, Solara was already moving. She reached into her pack and pulled out a device, a small, compact device Kael had never seen before. She activated it, and a high-pitched signal emanated from it. The creatures paused for a moment, their heads tilting in unison, as if listening. Kael watched in awe as Solara approached the leader, unarmed, with no fear in her steps. It was madness, she was walking straight into the jaws of death. Solara, stop! Kael shouted, his voice thick with panic. But Solara didn't falter. She reached the leader, standing mere feet from it. The massive creature roared, a sound that rattled the very ground beneath them, but Solara didn't back down. She raised her hands slowly, showing no aggression. The device continued to emit a steady, rhythmic signal. The leader paused, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. For a heartbeat, the air was thick with tension, the creature's massive form towering over her. Then, slowly, it lowered its head, its movements tentative. Kael watched, his heart in his throat. He had never seen anything like this before. The creature wasn't attacking. It was listening. Solara kept her voice calm, soothing, as if speaking to a wounded animal. "We're not your enemies. We don't want to fight." Kael stood frozen, his rifle still in hand, his mind racing. He was witnessing something he had never expected. This wasn't a hunt. This wasn't a battle. This was something else. The leader let out a low growl, but it wasn't a threat. It was a sound of understanding, of recognition. Slowly, it turned its massive head, and the rest of the creatures followed suit, their aggression beginning to fade. Kael lowered his rifle, his hands trembling. He hadn't fired a single shot, yet the situation had turned. "Is this what you meant?" Kael asked, his voice barely a whisper. Solara nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Sometimes, the greatest hunt is to learn to understand, not just kill." And for the first time, Kael understood. The hunt had never been about killing. It had always been about understanding who, and what, he was up against. As the creatures began to retreat, Kael stood silently, the weight of his rifle suddenly feeling heavier than ever. The true cost of survival, he realized, wasn't always in the kill, it was in the choices that led up to it. And for once, Kael Renar didn't feel like the predator.